The walk starts from Dorking station. Now heading under the railway bridge at Dorking Deepdene station, heading towards Dorking town centre. Now heading up the length of Dorking High Street. Now at the Queen's Head, we'll be heading into the countryside very shortly. And that sign, the Noah, is where we're going. Now at the Noah, countryside at last. And now it's quieter. I can tell you that it's a gloriously sunny day on Tuesday the 15th of April 2014. And this walk is about 13 miles to and from Dorking station. And that, where we're looking now, is the way the walk goes. The walk heads through the woodlands of the Noah. Towards the end of the Noah, the path plunges downhill. The walk joins this small road. The view further along the road. As you can see, we're now on a section of the Greensand Way long distance footpath. The walk now heads down this narrow enclosed track. After a few yards along a lane, the walk turns right up this narrow footpath. Further on, the path becomes enclosed. Further on, the path climbs quite steeply. Still on the enclosed path. Towards its end, the enclosed path heads downhill. That noise is a cat. The walk crosses this small common, which over the years has grown more wooded. By the way, we're still on the Greensand Way long distance footpath here. On the common, there is a seat with this fascinating sign. This is where I normally sit and have some water and something to eat. After the common, the walk heads downhill to the A25 main road along this track. Near to the A25, there's this large area of sandstone. Still on the Greensand Way, as you can see, at the main A25 road, the walk turns left along this track. Next, the walk passes this waterfall. At the end of the wide track or drive, the walk joins this narrow footpath. Further on, the path opens out. Further on, great views open out to the left. And there's the path ahead. At this fork, the walk takes the right-hand path, which leads steeply uphill. As I said, the path leads steeply up. At the top, the walk goes along this wide track, and there are decent views over to my left. At a junction, the walk turns left along this wide trackway. Great views over to my left. The track becomes sunken further on. Be warned that this area can get very, very muddy. It's not too bad today because of all the dry weather that we've been having. The path opens out further along. It's much more peaceful here, we're more remote. At a junction, the walk bears right along this wide track. Splendid views have opened up to my right. And there's the track, the way forward. Great views ahead along the track. More great views ahead. The walk passes this waterfall, which is featured in several of my other videos. The walk now goes through Broadmoor village. It leaves the Greensand Way at this point. Still heading through Broadmoor village. At the end of the village, the walk joins this wide path. And it also follows some cables. Later, a great view ahead opens up. Heading for Leith Hill, the walk now goes along this wide track. The walk passes a gate with these interesting carvings on. Here's the other carving. At the gate in the last couple of clips, there's a junction of paths. The walk heads straight along this track. At this junction of tracks, the path to Leith Hill forks to the left. Great trees to the left of the path. and that's the way ahead. This horrible muddy area, which is always impassable, still here I see. It's necessary to divert to the left up a slope and come down quite a nasty little slope. And then you can continue along the dry path ahead. Now rapidly approaching Leith Hill summit. There's Leith Hill Tower at the summit of Leith Hill, 985 feet above sea level, the highest point in southeast England. If you climb to the top of the tower when it's open, you're over 1,000 feet above sea level. Great views over towards the South Downs from the top of Leith Hill. A further look at the views.
Come over here. Come over here, Joseph. Joseph, come over here. Look at here. Whoa. That's big.
Well, no, no.
I asked. Take it.
Let Joseph move it for you.
A look at the views in a northerly direction. Now on the sharp descent from Leith Hill summit to Cockshot Hollow. Now at Cockshot Hollow, it's rather a pity a path has been gouged into it. Now heading into the National Trust, the Duke's Warren area. Heading towards Coldharbour village, which is about a mile away, and that's the path ahead. The path dips, and at that point there are great views ahead. Great tree view to my left, very peaceful here, and there is the path ahead. The walk goes through the gate ahead. Just to the left of the gate there's this chap, seems to be enjoying himself. The walk goes past this cricket pavilion area, and there's the way ahead. Now rapidly descending to Coldharbour village. The path emerges opposite the Plough Inn in Coldharbour. I've always liked the rainbow painted on these garage doors in Coldharbour. There's a decent view over to the North Downs from the road. The walk leaves the road on this path on the right, which leads into the Redlands woods area. Heading through Redlands woods, this is probably the most secluded part of the whole walk. The walk joins this wide path through the woods for a short distance. The walk leaves the wide path by the narrow path on the left. The walk passes this trig point in Redlands woods. The narrow path joins another wider path which descends. At this gate we rejoin the road for the worst part of the whole walk, a 3/4 of a mile slog downhill along the road with no pavement, and it's also quite busy. Now on the dreaded road walk. At last we can turn off by that post box along the track to the left. Great views over to the North Downs along the track, and that's the way ahead. The walk now crosses this field to the far left hand corner, and great views ahead. At the field corner, the walk joins this path which runs between fishing lakes. Now on a path that leads to the small road we saw near the beginning of the outward route from Dorking. Now back on the outward route on the small road that leads to the Noah. Now re-entering the Noah. Here's the sign for it. I'm now back at the foot of the Noah. All that needs to be done now is to walk the mile or so back along the streets of the outward route back to Dorking station. Now back at Dorking station and the end of today's walk.